I'm your Super Teacher Gorby, and for today's episode, I want to talk about bad advice. There's a lot of players out there who are given bad advice from other players, usually from people who say that I'm a veteran of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I know what is right and what is wrong. What's the worst advice you have ever heard / believed in? And the person says that I was told to run 60 cards until because I'll be able to use my most powerful cards. Another time, I believe that every deck I made should be 50% monsters, 25% spell, and 25% traps. Because that would mean I would have a higher chance at drawing what I need.
Man, this is a lot to process and digest.
Yes, because that makes sense. So if you want a monster card, but you don't want a trap card, by having a higher trap ratio, you are decreasing the chances of getting the monster card you want. Exactly. Another thing was back when I thought cards like Solemn Strike or any other card that cost life points awful, because younger me thought that life points were the most important thing in the game and I had to keep mine higher than my opponent at all costs. So life points do indeed matter in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! When you get to game 3, that is when life points matter. Life points 100% do matter when you get to game 3, but they don't really matter as much when you get to games 1 and games 2. But I understand there are a lot of people who believe the sentiment that Solemn Strike and Solemn Judgments are not good cards because it creates a life point discrepancy. But they are so powerful and are so useful and so good that they can single-handedly just stop your opponent from playing the game off one properly timed negate, that it is definitely worth it for you to deplete life points. To reorder my deck in monster spells and traps after every duel. It's called shuffling. Watching the anime as a kid, you may believe that I should always fight to the bitter end, but man, sometimes you just gotta scoop, you know? Yes, I always say that here. Games should not go as long as they really should. There are moments in time where my opponent will have an awesome board that I cannot break, and I just scoop. There's no point in playing through it though if I know for darn sure that I cannot break it. I'm not even attempt to break a board if I know that's not really plausible. I'll attempt to do so, but I'm not gonna take up 20 minutes, which is what some players do in trying to break a board, only to end up losing the end here. You need to manage your time here, especially with the time rules. There is an issue in the time rules right now where games are going way too long, and it would be good at times to just scoop early and give up and just go to game 2 or game 3. Really, you don't need to play out every duel until the very bitter end here. You can just scoop really. That playing 20 monsters, 10 spells, and 10 traps in all my decks was the best way to play them. Middle school me would have had a heart attack looking at Super Heavy Samurai. Super Heavy Samurai is one of the best decks right now in current Yu-Gi-Oh! But yeah, you don't need to follow the 20 monsters, 10 spells, 10 traps thing. What matters the most, I'm not going to say you need all spells or all monsters or all traps. You need to find something that applies to the deck that you are specifically playing. For some decks, you need a lot of trap cards. For some decks, you don't need spells at all. Or there are even some other decks, like Sky Strikers, which has 10 monsters and then 30 spells in them. Yeah, different decks have different ratios. I'm not here to tell you that there's any one ratio that's absolutely better than others. But depending on the deck you play, that deck will have certain ratios and you need to go play through that. Not every deck is the same way. And that's one of the cool parts about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that there are so many decks that play differently that the ratios are almost always different. Yes, GOAT format has no meta. That's why you see equal amounts of each card. People mistake that GOAT format was just oh, I miss old school Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it was back and forth and everyone was different. No, that was playground Yu-Gi-Oh! People mistake old school Yu-Gi-Oh! For playground Yu-Gi-Oh! Or you have this weird version of Yu-Gi-Oh! That existed during the time that you played that was outside the norm of Yu-Gi-Oh! They're like me when I played Yu-Gi-Oh! With my buddies. I was playing the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! With our own rules, and I was fully aware, and I acknowledge the fact that the way we played Yu-Gi-Oh! Was not the actual real way of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! There are people who play certain decks in certain timelines or time frames and have a very skewed thought or skewed version of how the game works. Relevant to what's actually happening in the timeline. To not buy structured decks and build my own from boosters. No. Okay, here's the thing. For the most part, when it comes to booster sets, there are deck building booster sets out there that exist. like Maze of Memories, which like you get that in order to go make your Gate Guardian deck here. But really, you want to get structure decks because some of them are exceptionally amazing. The Monarch structure deck is really good. Dark World is really good. If you want to play just a base version of Cyber Dragons, it exists out there. Salamangreat is one of the greatest decks of all time. It exists in the form of a structure deck, and in these structure decks, they have also have great reprints. Especially in the past 3 years, Konami has really made an effort to have these structure decks have these like super powerful cards in them that are awesome, or meta staples. Like Trap Tricks is a really darn good structure deck out there, and all because like I understand that it was a thing back then, like structure decks used to be considered like really bad, but in the past couple years it's kind of been reframed where structure decks can be really darn powerful. Phantom Knight's best deck every year, and in deck theory Phantom Knights should be amazing, but they're not. Being told that life points don't matter was really bad advice. Life points are very important in Yu-Gi-Oh! Since it's one resource that decides if you win or lose. Once again, I'll say this: life points don't matter in games 1 and 2 all that much, but they do come in handy at times. There's a reason why Cowboy for Game was memed upon so much, because Cowboy for Game can literally win a game on its own on that burn damage. And yeah, life points do matter, but they are not the absolute thing that matters the most though, but they are definitely important. Trap cards are bad. No one uses them because they're too slow. It's kind of true, but not really. Oh, set 5 pass, my favorite pastime. It's a lot more slower than spell cards, a lot more slower than monster, but that doesn't make them bad. Playing so means that you're just changing the tempo or the speed of the game. That doesn't mean it has to be, it's a bad thing, or it doesn't. We've seen a lot of it, from Altergeist to Guru Control to Labyrinth to Eldritch, to even Muskets actually, where you have these control-based stun strategies that play exceptionally very slow and have had great competitive success, and they're reliant on trap cards. Yes, the game has sped up. Yes, the game is faster. I understand that. But heck, one of the greatest decks in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the past 5 years is Sky Strikers, and that deck plays very slow, very grind heavy. If we're gonna go by the logic that any deck that plays ultra fast is the best deck, then by that logic then Sylvans and Deities should in theory be the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because they play the fastest, but that's not really the case here. Even Runic is a very slow plotting deck, and that deck can go win out wins in tournaments and even on Masterduels. In the OCG, TCG, and in Masterduels, slow base decks can win you something. It just, if you're playing a deck that's meant to be played fast, you should not have trap cards in it, except for like a couple few, because you want to maintain that speed of playing fast. But if you're playing a deck that wins through the grind game and by playing slow, that's not inherently a bad thing. It really isn't. Always play 60 cards so your opponent playing 40 will deck out before you do. Yes, because you know how rare it is to win a duel of Yu-Gi-Oh! Through deck outs? Very little. Do not use your rare cards, they can be stolen this way. If you go on YCSs or regionals, or heck, even a local setting, there are instances where people will steal your decks physically and literally. I'm very blessed and happy that I'm in a situation where my locals has really wholesome, nice people, but you just have to be extra protective with your cards if you're in an area that you're unfamiliar with. YCSs have thousands of people, regionals has hundreds of players in there. You don't know who these people are, so I just say just be protective. You can bring your rare cards out there. You can bring your, because like if you have a rare card and you spend a lot of money on it, you might as well use it. Just be very protective of it as if it's like, you know, your car keys. If you have any bad advice that's been given to you, feel free to comment down. Feel free to like and subscribe if you want to. You totally don't have to want to do so, but really cool if you did. And so hopefully you enjoyed the video. Until next time, see you guys later.